Hi, my name is Jerome II. I'm 20 years old. I'm a White House Environmental Justice Advisor. I'm a climate justice activist, and I'm the co-founder of Wake Up, which is a communication to action organization platforming climate vulnerable communities to tell the realities of the climate emergency. Today, I will talk with you all about why we not only need a green transition, but a just transition to a sustainable future. In the next 15 minutes, I want to break down what a just transition actually means in today's society. But first, it is critical to understand where we came from and how we got to where we are today. Climate change is a direct symptom of colonialism. From the economic system of capitalism that dehumanized people for the sake of extraction, driving indigenous and black people to near extinction. Right now, we see that same system of capitalism dehumanizing and destroying our planet. Today, we are in the midst of a climate emergency. This is a state of emergency. We are seeing plants and animals die every single day. But if we look at what's happening right now, just more than a week ago, 1/3 of the country of Pakistan was underwater. The flood claimed more than 1,000 lives and over $10 billion in damages. Families and children died at the hands of fossil fuel extraction. They died because of the greed of money and the lack of action by politicians. That is why we're seeing so many atrocities happening across our planet, because we fail to act and we fail to do what is needed of us. Earlier this week, extreme storms caused the Pearl River to overflow in Jackson, Mississippi, in the US. It's an 80% black community. And it's because of environmental racism that we see all across our planet that they were left with toxic water notice for over 2 months before any storm hit. And once the storm hit, now they have no access to clean water. We've seen the same thing happen with Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana in the US, where a community that was white had access to clean water weeks after the storm. But to this day, years later, 10 years later, they still are without access. They're still without homes. They're still without shelter. That is the reality of the climate crisis. And every time we go into political spaces, we have to have that same urgency and energy to our action. But if we don't, we will pass 1.5 degrees of warming. And based on the IPCC report, a 2 degrees warmer world will represent that scientists categorize a profoundly different climate, with fiercer storms, higher rising tides, uncontrollable raging fires, and people dying from heat, smog, and infectious disease. Even here in Romania, we see desertification from the Sahara Desert expanding northward. We must take action, because we must. We are in a position to do something. But the most important thing I want to talk about today is explaining what a just transition actually means. A just transition means fulfilling our loss and damage funds at COP27. It means building climate-resilient infrastructure. A just transition means having equity and justice at the center of all our climate solutions. We must have the courage and moral clarity to build that world for future generations. Right now, we must be the change we need to see. We must stand up for the families in Pakistan, for the refugees that are facing the climate crisis right now, for the indigenous communities in the Amazon who are dying because of the assassination by illegal loggers, for the LGBT homeless youth who have no access to take refuge from hurricanes and typhoons, for the LGBT youth who are organizing this space, and for my generation and for my future. But there is hope today. This is the hope. It's talking, it's creating, it's having this conference where we're seeing new dialogues and new solutions come from hearing new perspectives of people all across the world coming together and trying to find a solution to this crisis. Everyone here, by coming out here, has become a part of the change. And we must have the ambition, the moral clarity, the understanding that we are sent here by millions of people to be the change, to continue stepping forward. I challenge all of you to take on that ambition. For every young person who has entered these spaces and has tried to make change, who are now adults still making that change, I challenge you to be that. For my work in the White House, I've seen that I've joined a council that works on environmental justice, advancing what communities need by advocating for 40% of investment benefits going to frontline communities. From that work, I went on and continued organizing in politics to make sure that we have the Inflation Reduction just passed, which is the most aggressive decarbonization bill in the nation, which has $62 billion for frontline communities. That's the type of scale of action we need. But even that is only 50% of what we need. That only gets us to 40% of the emission reductions the US pledged, and so many other countries pledged. But we need to get to net zero, even beyond net zero. Because even with our current pledges that we're going to see at COP27, that will only get us to 1.7 degrees limit. But our target is 1.5. So what do we need? A Green New Deal scale of mobilization. When we're here, we can't negotiate down or water down our policies. You have to be steadfast in your values. You have to know what you're fighting for, so that when we go into those spaces and money and greed take over, we are solid in our stance. That is what we need in this next decade of action. 5.5 years before we start reaching 1.5 degrees. 5.5 years. We will all be alive in this space. We'll all be here still working, and we have a chance to make the change that we want to see. So we need to be it. Thank you.